So first, since I mentioned before we started, I was a little confused. What exactly did the council approve tonight in regards to the Fox Theater?
The demolition of the back 2/3 of the building, for starters. It seems like they want to go a little bit further, so we're gonna probably have another special meeting to determine that. But the main issue is that the raise order is a safety issue. We need to get that taken care of. By demolishing the back 2/3, or roughly 2/3, the front third is still there, but the city doesn't own it. The owners have already said that they don't have the ways or means to do anything to preserve that building. So my concern is that that front third is going to deteriorate to the point of being unrecoverable. And I don't want to see that. My goal all along, and I think most of city staff and the city council, the goal is to preserve at least the historic look of that building and the downtown and the contribution that it makes to our history. But we can't do that without owning it. And the ownership has all been approved with the exception of one condition, and that is a condition that the Sanders family put on in regards to the restrictive uses that can be allowed there. With the restrictive uses, excuse me, it's very limiting as to what it can be used for, which would tie our hands for any sort of development. Effectively, if someone wanted to come in and open up a retail center, they couldn't do it. They wanted to open up an office building, they couldn't do it because of those restrictive agreements. So, and I don't know what the logic was behind it, but we had a verbal agreement to dissolve that in the best interest of the community. And the Sanders family made it clear tonight that they're not going to sign off on that. So that restriction is there for 15 years, 15 more years.
So then who does technically own the building right now?
Fox on Main LLC, which is just a secondary company really of Create Portage County. But Fox on Main has said that they don't have the resources or the ability to do anything with that building anymore, and they kind of want to walk away from it.
So does the city have any options left then to try and obtain the building?
I am sure going to try. We're going to try as hard as we can to find some options. So we have... Yes, there are options, right? If we can shore up that building, the council could choose to accept that property without lifting those restrictions. Again, though, that makes it very difficult to redevelop a property when you are limited on the uses. However, then the city would be on the hook for making sure that the front third remains safe. So patching the roof that is in immediate need of repair would fall on the taxpayers, and the council would vote to approve that. So we're very likely going to have a special meeting to consider that. It sounded like at least some wanted to talk about it. We couldn't talk about it tonight because it wasn't on the agenda. So we'll have a special meeting and talk about it, maybe before committees next week, and see where that takes us. The other thing is the Sanders family could sign off on that agreement, and we move ahead with saving it.
Speaking of the Sanders family, there was a comment that came up from Oliver in the meeting talking about blame and kind of putting the blame on the Sanders family. Do you want to comment on that, or kind of?
I can,
what that
and I'll
is?
say the same thing I said at the meeting. There is so much blame to go around that everybody gets a piece of it. Former city administration, the taxpayers of the city of Stevens Point voted in a referendum to go ahead and build that mall, which included tearing down the backstage area of the Fox Theater. There's some blame there. The 30 plus years that it sat vacant under the Sanders family ownership, while it was maintained and inspected, it was never actively redeveloped. There have been plenty of opportunities, but it was never, it was maintained, but it wasn't ever turned into anything. It stayed closed. There's some blame there. Then Create Portage County, Arts Alliance took it over. They had a great plan, and I thought that it was finally going to have something done, and it was a really good idea. And that fell through. It didn't happen. There's some blame there. There's some blame on current city staff. We should have been on the owners 5 years ago when we started seeing those roof trusses fail. We didn't know about it, but it's to the point now where it's almost unrecoverable. I mean, seriously, we've had engineers in there that don't want to stay there because they feel it's unsafe. And now we're at a point where we have an option to take the ownership of it as a city, save what we can, and preserve that history and redevelop it into something useful. And without that dissolved agreement, which is entirely in the Sanders family hands at this point, that can't happen either. So everybody gets a little piece of blame.
And then what can you tell me about the company that was selected this evening to work on the building?
So we always try and work out the best case scenarios of things, right? Rather than just demolish the building and it goes to a landfill and whatever. This company works to reclaim materials. It's a bit of a slower process, but they're going to start quicker, and they're going to reclaim some of those. So essentially, the pieces of the Fox Theater will live on through other buildings, and I don't know where they're going to get used, but they will salvage the bricks and any lumber that isn't water damaged and with mold and things like that. They're going to salvage what they can, and then they put that to use in other construction projects. So I think if we have to tear it down, and that's what it looks like because we don't have that agreement, if we have to tear it down, this is probably the best way to do it, so at least it lives on a little bit.
And speaking of, if the entire building comes down, do you know what kind of effect that could have on the neighboring buildings or the downtown area, losing that?
So someone put it, Alder Slawinski actually put it the best way. It would be like a missing tooth downtown. You have a continuous downtown building down all the way down the street, and now you'll have a gap, a vacant lot that once was a historic theater. So the emotional effect it will have on economic development, I think, is significant enough where we need to be concerned. The structural or physical effects, yeah, there's always some concern about the neighboring buildings. You're taking down a structure that's literally connected to the building next door. But there's professionals that they do this frequently enough where I don't think there's going to be a problem.
Anything else?
No, I wish things went differently.